What if you turned on the news and got as many ideas as you do reasons for exasperation? What if you saw people collaborating and cooperating and shifting power in all sorts of ways we're usually told are impossible? Well, that's what the Laura Flanders Show is all about. We set out to bring you reporting not on somebody's pipe dream of how things could be, but on real work that is happening right now and shifting power across this country and the world. We don't receive money from corporations or governments. We're backed by you, our listeners and supporters. So pony up some support today at lauraflanders.org. Hi, I'm Laura Flanders, and this is the Laura Flanders Show, the TV and radio program that seeks to raise radical spirits by interviewing forward-thinking people with real-life models of shifting power from the few to the many in the worlds of arts, entrepreneurship, and governance. Scientists say that our annual carbon dioxide emissions need to plunge by half by the year 2030 if we want to keep world warming within safe-ish levels. But we emit way too much now to hit that target, and instead of plunging, emissions are still going up by 2.5% in the US and way worse than that in China last year. In the last week of the old Congress, activists from something called the Sunrise Movement called for a total transition to renewables and a massive investment in new technology funded by the federal government. The so-called Green New Deal scored headlines, but the new House leadership nixed a select committee to plan it, and even within movement ranks, the reference to the New Deal gave some people pause. So what next? Is a more 21st century New Green Deal possible? And if so, how to get there? And what does any of this have to do with the Yellow Vest protests that have been taking place in France? Joining us to discuss all of this and more, I have Elizabeth Yampierre, co-chair of the Climate Justice Alliance, Varshini Prakash, co-founder of the Sunrise Movement, and Sean Sweeney of the School of Labor and Urban Studies here at the City University of New York. Varshini, let's come to you first. We were there on the ground. The Laura Flanders Show had reporters in Washington in November, and we caught you and some of your colleagues as you were protesting in the streets. Talk a little bit about the context for that November demonstration. Why'd you pick the timing, and what were you setting out to accomplish?
Sure. So this was exactly 1 week after young people had turned out in historic numbers in the midterm elections of 2018. We had been seeing articles all across the news cycle saying that Dems were damping down hopes on climate for the 116th Congress. And we saw Nancy Pelosi get on TV right after the Democrats took back the House and say that her answer to solving the climate crisis was to revive an ancient committee tasked with studying the issue and the impacts of the crisis.
Just what we need, another committee.
Just what we need when UN climate scientists are literally telling us we have 12 years to make unprecedented changes to every part of our society and economy to stop the crisis. So naturally, hundreds of young people were pretty pissed off about this and decided to take action to ensure that climate change would become a urgent political priority for Democrats in the new Congress.
All right, so we were there. Check it out.
We don't have time for any more excuses. We need the real solutions to the climate crisis. Am I right? Yeah! We need the real solutions to the climate crisis as mandated by science and justice. And that means a rapid, wartime economic mobilization to transition our economy and our society over the next 12 years to stop the climate crisis. Starting now, not starting in 10 years.
Sunrise is a movement of young people fighting to stop climate change and create millions of good jobs in the process. We will be visiting around 50 different members of Congress to ask them to support Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's proposal for a select committee on a Green New Deal. And we will be visiting 3 key offices of Democrats in the House who hold a lot of power and asking them especially to support the proposal. It started out as a very small group of people who came together and wanted to do this, and has slowly over the past 2 years grown And just a month ago, we were in the same building asking for the same thing. And in that month, we have grown by the hundreds, by the thousands around the country. And we're back to demand a Green New Deal. Last year, Hurricane Irma hit my hometown. And it was the first time in my memory that we were given evacuation orders. And my grandparents couldn't evacuate because they were both in wheelchairs. That's when I knew this is something I had to actively fight for. So a Green New Deal would give my state hope for any sort of a future.
Green jobs, can't lose! Green rights, full rights! Green jobs, can't lose!
The UN released a terrifying but illuminating report that says that we have 12 years for a rapid wartime-esque economic mobilization to transition every part of society to stop the climate crisis. In that, they call for a transition to a 100% renewable energy economy. They're calling for massive investment in the front lines of poverty and pollution to ensure that the people who are hit first and worst by the climate crisis are not left behind, and massive investment in jobs and infrastructure to stop the climate crisis. So all of those things are included in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Select Committee for a Green New Deal.
We are a movement of young people fighting to stop climate change. Young folks have waited for our whole lives, for decades, for leadership to put forward policy that would save our futures, and it has not happened.
And over the past 3 weeks, we have heard excuse after excuse for why our Democratic leaders can't support this committee. We've heard it's not the right committee, it's not the right time, we don't know enough about it. That is no excuse for jeopardizing my generation, our generation's future, and the lives of our children and our children's children and our children's children's children.
This is your second warning. If you do not wish to be arrested, this is your second warning.
Over 100 young people risked and then were arrested following the sit-in that we had at Rep. Pelosi, Rep. Hoyer, and Rep. McGovern's offices today, some of the highest-ranking Democratic leaders in the party. There are 1,000 other young people who are here who are rallying in support and will continue the effort to organize not just in D.C., but in our communities and our contexts at home to bring a Green New Deal and push federal policymakers who are accountable to us to back this. By the time those 12 years that scientists have given us to transition the economy are up, many of our members will be 30 years old, and our lives and our futures will be condemned forever. The next step is all throughout 2019, we're going to be making building the political consensus and the public support that will, in 2021 and beyond, make a Green New Deal a political inevitability.
So, Vashni, congratulations. What's happened since?
Well, there has been so much energy and activism. We've seen thousands and thousands of young people who have come out of the woodwork, who are excited about a plan that actually goes to the scale and scope of the crisis, that is talking about centering racial and economic justice, that builds upon the work that the Climate Justice Alliance and so many other groups have done for decades. And we've seen hundreds of people visiting congressional offices to ask them to back a Green New Deal. We've seen thousands of articles written about this.
But Pelosi and all those high-powered Dems, whose offices you sat in on?
Yeah, but unfortunately, again, the Democratic establishment didn't take the opportunity that we put in front of them. We were utterly disappointed when Nancy Pelosi and Democratic leaders did not actually embrace the Select Committee for a Green New Deal and instead created a Select Committee for the climate crisis that has no subpoena power, that doesn't include a mandate to actually draft a plan for a Green New Deal, and it allows people taking money from fossil fuel executives to sit on.
That's Varshney Prakash, Communications Director and co-founder of Sunrise, a growing movement of young climate activists who are pushing for a Green New Deal, of the sort that's backed by freshman Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who we'll hear from later. Want to see Varshney and her team in action? Watch our report on their sit-down in Congress at our website. That's www.lauraflanders.org. This show airs over the Pacifica Radio Network and is also available through PRX, the Public Radio Exchange. Is your community radio station airing the Laura Flanders Show? If not, contact them or drop us an email and we'll follow up. That email should go to info@lauraflanders.org. That's info@lauraflanders.org. We're on a mission to double the radio stations carrying the show this year, and you can help. Meanwhile, if you're enjoying the program, express yourself on social media. Share, like, and follow us to help spread the word. Next, to join in the conversation, veterans of the global environmental justice movement, Elizabeth Yampierre of the Climate Justice Alliance, and Sean Sweeney, who directs Cornell's Global Labor Institute's International Program for Labor, Climate, and Environment. I'll ask for their take on the Green New Deal, but first, here's Leaving This Planet by Mark de Clive Lowe, featuring Charlene Hector. It's a remake and homage to Charles Earland's 1970s classic. Welcome to our reality, right? I mean, Elizabeth, your reactions to seeing this, to seeing the coverage, great, all these new people out of the woodwork. You've been out of that woodwork for a while.
Right. Well, it was mixed. It was, this is really exciting. People have finally discovered that we're in the middle of a crisis and that we have to respond in a big way. Then it was, okay, what is this? And what does this mean for frontline communities? And how are decisions being made? And, there's a basic tenet of environmental justice that we speak for ourselves, that people of color and frontline communities speak for ourselves. And the idea of something being created without frontline communities developing it or creating it or putting in its recommendations was pretty kind of old school. And so, but we didn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I know it's a terrible thing to say, but we didn't want to do that. We wanted to see what's the possibility, what's happening here, and how can we shape it moving forward.
So what did you do?
And so what we did was we consulted with our 68 groups throughout the country and our networks and alliances. We asked them if they had heard about it. Most hadn't. We put together a platform that came from this consultative process. We shared that with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and then we set up a meeting with her, and I think the meeting went really well.
This is the congresswoman from New York, who is the
from
youngest
New York,
ever elected,
Puerto Rican,
and got very involved in this.
And she's from an EJ community, and so we believed that she would understand us, but not just hear us, but feel us, that she understands that this is where we're all coming from, and that we have always been about solutions, and that solutions are local, and that we have been operationalizing those solutions for a really long time.
So she met with you all in her office?
We did, just I think it was last week.
And this morning I had the distinct honor of meeting with representatives from frontline communities and the Climate Justice Alliance to figure out how we can bring Kentucky, how we can bring Native tribes, how we can bring the South Bronx and the direct communities impacted into the space of leadership so they can draft and lead a Green New Deal for the United States. I can't tell you how important and how much of a privilege and an honor it is to meet with the folks on the ground doing the work and being able to uplift their ideas to put them in a position of leadership. We need to be able to trust that communities can govern themselves, and I'm so excited to have heard and and uplift those solutions. So thank you all so much.
So we brought in Tom Goldtooth from the Indigenous Environmental Network. We brought in folks from Portland, folks from Kentucky, from people who are doing work on mountaintop removal, who are trying to transition away from an extractive economy. I was representing both CJ and my organization, which, as you know, just launched the first community-owned solar cooperative in the state of New York. So those are examples of the things that we're doing in West Virginia, in Brooklyn, in Detroit, all over. So
moving to you, Sean, this is all happening while something kind of interesting is happening on the international front, specifically in France with these yellow vest protests. How do you see the connection, if there is one?
I think there's a strong connection. First and foremost, people are rising up for different reasons. But once they are in motion, they see the connections between many issues.
I mean, if you only had read the New York Times about the Yellow Vest protest, you would think this is working class white people against a well-intentioned environmental measure, a carbon tax.
Yes. Well, those people on those demonstrations are far more intelligent than that. They know that a charge on gasoline or diesel is not going to do anything to improve the climate crisis, that we do need radical measures.
They were saying, we're happy to give up our cars, but we need trains. We need infrastructure.
We're talking about many people living in rural areas that have had their railways privatized, their buses privatized. Macron is leading the privatization push in France of public transport. So here we have a situation they can see through the hypocrisy and the contradictions of boutique environmentalism that only pleases the investors. And this is a fundamental rebellion against the market and the idea that we have to turn the green transition into something that people are going to make a load of money from. So I think what Elizabeth said earlier is absolutely right on target. This has got to come from the people.
So is there a we now? I mean, is this a we at the table here, Elizabeth?
I think we're working on building the bigger we. And what that means is we have to find alignment. There was some language in the Green New Deal that was concerning, like carbon sequestration, carbon capture. There were concepts that were really contrary to how we think we need to move away from fossil fuel extraction. And I think that we're working on, we need to build a bigger we. We have to be doing
even the New Deal frame, it has different resonances for different people. So I know a lot of folks who have a warm feeling about FDR and, the last big federal investment, direct investment in a jobs program, the New Deal, stopped a depression in the light of a war, but there are a lot of other people who say, wait a minute, didn't cover farm workers, didn't cover domestic workers, didn't cover people who work for tips. A whole lot of people, disproportionately people of color, disproportionately women of color, got written out. So why are we talking New Deals?
Absolutely. And I think that's a history that we have to understand in order to make something much better in this moment. It is, to me, if this transition towards a better economy and society doesn't include and doesn't go through increasing racial equity and wealth and obliterating wealth inequality, it is not a Green New Deal. I think we have a history in this country of treating people cruelly and differently because of the color of our skin, and of a political elite class that is all too tolerant of rampant wealth inequality, both domestically and globally, and that's led to communities of color bearing the brunt of both disaster, but also of pollution and extraction.
Those frontline communities you're talking about.
Hi, I'm Laura. This is the Laura Flanders Show. My guests, Varshini Prakash, Communications Director and co-founder of the Sunrise Movement, Elizabeth Yampierre, co-chair of the Climate Justice Alliance, and Sean Sweeney, Director of Cornell's International Program for Labor, Climate and Environment. After the break, I ask Yampierre whether the Climate Justice Alliance is working in parallel or actually intersecting with the French Yellow Vest movement and others. In the TV edition, you can watch some of the Yellow Vest movement news reporting and find more coverage of what's happening in the US and internationally. That's at www.lauraflanders.org. Meanwhile, here's Song for the Yellow Vests by Birmingham, UK's Lee Brickley, who notes that the song was written in solidarity with all French workers protesting their government right now, from the left and the right. More to come.
With the last revolution in the forefront of their minds, they tried to bring an end to the man who crossed the line. His fuel hikes weren't acceptable and everyone was poor. People said we've had enough and tried to show Macron the door. More than 250,000 put on their yellow vests, hated by the government, supported by the rest. The demonstration grew and soon everyone could see there's something beautiful happening on the Paris streets. They sent 5,000 police officers to keep the peace. They fired tear gas and their water cannons knocked people off their feet. So the barricades went up, we almost saw a civil war. The French workers and their comrades are no longer on the floor. More than 250,000 put on their yellow vests, hated by the government, supported by the rest. The demonstration grew and soon everyone could see there's something beautiful happening on the Paris streets. And these people aren't going away. They will block the roads and stay out every day until they can see some kind of change. Direct action is the only game they'll play. After 1 month the truth is plain and everybody knows those yellow vests are everywhere and no police can oppose. The French president is looking scared, he stays hidden away. A new revolution is coming and it started here today. More than 250,000 put on their yellow vests, hated by the government, supported by the rest. The demonstration grew and soon everyone could see there's something beautiful happening on the Paris streets. There's something beautiful happening on the Paris streets. There's something beautiful happening on the Paris streets.
The Yellow Vest movement in France clearly is going through some of the same discussions that we're having here. Elizabeth, thoughts then? Are you connected? Is the Climate Justice Alliance connected with what's happening in other countries?
We are, we always talk about the global south and the fact that people who live in the global south are the ones being impacted by decisions made by corporations and by, the United States. So we are connected. Our members go to Brazil, they go to Honduras, they go to different parts of Latin America and other parts of the world to build alliances. We have similar challenges everywhere where you've got folks that don't want to center racial justice in a climate conversation. We've got unions that are thinking about jobs but aren't thinking about fossil fuel extraction and what that means and what that process looks like. And so I think that it makes it impossible to move as quickly as we'd like to, because people really, their process, their way of working with each other is very capitalist. It's very extractive and competitive. It's not about collaborations.
So, Sean, let me bring you back in. I can't help thinking back to the 30s again. Right. For all of my criticisms of the New Deal, this was a compromise that capitalism made in face of demand and the scary prospect to them of a sort of socialist rise in Europe and in the United States. Can we get beyond? How do we get beyond, or is the agenda to get beyond kind of pleading with the Pelosi's of the world to amassing that kind of power? And is that a relevant model for 21st century USA?
I think there are many parts of that model that is indeed relevant. First and foremost, yes, it was an emergency response. But look what happened. It changed the paradigm. And in the way that, for example, the Rural Electrification Administration, something I'm particularly fond of, did it do everything right? No, it didn't. But only 10% of rural homes had electricity in 1935, and it became almost 100% within an 18, 19-year period. It was the government acting, yes, to sustain its own system, perhaps, But it suspended markets. It basically said, these people can't afford to pay for electricity, but we're going to provide electricity anyway.
But acting because they were afraid. There was a push coming to them from the left. Is there that kind of thing today, Varshini?
Oh, absolutely. And I think part of what we are doing as Sunrise is being a part of a battle for the heart and soul of the Democratic Party. I think that is what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a part of. A lot of these incredible young women of color who are changing the face of the Democratic Party are actually fighting for it to be a party that works for all working people.
I was just going to say that we are working locally, regionally, and statewide because the Democratic Party has often failed us. And so we don't want to put all our eggs in one basket, regardless of what governance. Climate change is going to disrupt governance. So we have to incorporate and operationalize just transitions on the ground. And we hope that this is a just Green New Deal that funds and makes it possible for us to amplify the work that we've been doing for generations and for years. Because right now, it is really difficult for people of color to even trust the democratic system in the way that it's basically played our communities.
John?
I see everybody is becoming engaged in a new way. Let's look at some of the progressive unions. We talk a lot about the more conservative and cautious unions. The progressive unions in nursing, healthcare, public transport, postal services, they are pushing hard for this new public narrative, connecting the dots. And I think this has global significance. We're at a breakthrough moment. Like you can see it, not just in the United States, but around the world. Yes, there are right-wing movements, but there are also a thinking, new left, pro-public, pro-ecology, pro-health narrative that's emerging across these movements.
So if the fires and the waters and the famines are going to break through, power needs to too. All right, thank you all. Really fantastic conversation. I appreciate it. Sean Sweeney, Elizabeth Yampierre, and Varshini Prakash, thank you so much.
That was Sean Sweeney, director of Cornell University's Global Labor Institute's International Program for Labor, Climate and Environment. Elizabeth Yampierre, co-chair of the Climate Justice Alliance, and Varshini Prakash, communications director and co-founder of Sunrise. We encourage you to explore our archive and watch today's show to see the news from the Sunrise Movement's action in Washington and the latest from what's been happening with the Yellow Vests in France. You can also find additional interviews with Yampierre and Sweeney and coverage of the many issues that were raised in today's program at our website. That is www.lauraflanders.org. Thanks to all of you who donated and became a member during our 10-year anniversary fund drive. It is not too late to join our, 11-year anniversary fund drive. So go for it at lauraflanders.org/donate. And while you're there, subscribe to this podcast and maybe write us a little review. It really helps us spread the word. To receive extra content, including our latest minicast, Who's Afraid of Public Ownership, my interview with Thomas Hanna, a research director at the Democracy Collaborative and the author most recently of Our Commonwealth, The Return of Public Ownership in the United States. All you have to do is subscribe to the podcast. You'll get news of extras like that on a regular basis. This show is produced by yours truly, Laura Flanders, with Monica Mohapatra, Charlotte Carpenter, Nat Needham, Natasha Gaspar, Jeannie Hopper, Joanna Pinto, and Dominic Marcella. The Laura Flanders Show is made possible from the Novo, Ford, Tomcat, Cloud Mountain, and Fonda Foundations, as well as by listeners like you. So thank you. Stay kind, stay curious. Until the next time, I'm Laura.